The government tonight saying that this historic drought is now taking a bigger toll on American farms than we first thought, and that every American family could soon end up paying the price at the grocery store. How bad is it? This is a farm in Meade, Nebraska. Late last summer, the stalks a healthy green and reaching about 8 feet high. That's where they should be this time of year. And this evening, this is how a cornfield in that same town looks today. Everything burned from the sun and withered. And so tonight here, we're going to go back out onto the farm to hear the faces of this drought. ABC's meteorologist Ginger Z leading us off.
A staggering 1/6 of the U.S. corn crop has been lost in just the last month. And the ultimate cost to the U.S. economy could run as high as $80 billion. Farmers like John Kefner of Manhattan, Illinois, whose plight World News is following, has been sounding the alarm for weeks.
This is what a healthy ear of corn looks like, but unfortunately this year, I produced a lot of ears that look like this.
Images like those helped push corn prices to record highs on future markets today, which means almost everything will cost you more at the grocery store. One estimate, an additional $300 to feed a family of 4 over the next year. That's $75 for every man, woman, and child. It's not just food, it's fuel, biofuels. By law, about 40% of U.S. feed corn is used to make ethanol, making shortages worse. And look at this, the drought since June has grown significantly, and it's only getting worse. Even taking the mighty out of the mighty Mississippi. Because of low water levels, barges that transport food either can't operate or have to lighten their loads.
Normally, these corn plants would be about 8 or 10 feet tall. I'd be standing in the shade, the sun wouldn't be beating down on my head.
Not far away in Creston, Illinois,
the majority of it is corn, soybean meal.
Jan Huber is already paying extra to find feed for his pigs. Some of his neighbors have just given up.
We've got farms that are already going into liquidation. We're going to end up with food supplies nationwide. They're going to be short.
And all of these shortages are triggering fears of a worldwide food crisis.
And of course, we're going to stick with those farmers throughout all of it.
We're on the bridge of the Joseph Merrick Jones as Captain Gene Waller threads a string of barges nearly 4 football fields long up the shrunken Mississippi River.
Yeah, I think it's a little shallow above that river, so I'm not going to go by normal.
In his 28 years of piloting towboats for the Canal Barge Company, he's never seen the Mississippi drop so far, so fast.
What's the biggest thing that worries you?
The unexpectedly hitting a shallow spot.
Running into the bottom.
Right.
Just ahead, he's heard the river is only 9 feet deep. He sits 9 feet 3 inches in the water.
You're deeper in the water than that water is deep.
Right.
How often do you find yourself looking at that depth gauge?
All the time.
He's got reason to be nervous. Over the last 2 weeks, boats and barges have been running aground nearly every day.
We probably had on the order of 15 to 20 different small incidents or groundings, some of them in the channel and some of the outside of the channel.
How does that compare to a normal time?
I would say that's probably certainly an increase from what we normally see.
And there are other problems. The giant American Queen has to let passengers off on a levee because the water is too shallow where it normally docks. Huge areas of riverbeds sit exposed, looking like desert, causing one lawmaker to quit. The Mississippi's got more beaches than Florida, which would be funny if it wasn't about to cost us all. You see, the Mississippi moves all sorts of things we use a lot of, like grain, oil, coal, and steel.
Everybody's having to lighten the loads up and knock the barge the size of the toes down.
So here's the map. If you want to raise the average barge 1 inch in the water, you've got to take off 17 tons of cargo. To raise it a foot, you're talking 200 tons.
And since, according to the American Waterways operators, moving cargo by river is $11 a ton cheaper than by train or truck, the more that now has to be moved on land, well, the more the costs go up.
and eventually the consumer is going to pay that price somewhere along the line.
That's Stephen Berry with the Army Corps of Engineers. I asked him the question that's on many people's minds.
They're worried the river could close. What would you say?
Well, I don't. I think with the proactive stance the Corps is taking, I don't see the river actually closing.
That proactive stance includes building thousands of rock dikes like these that jut into the water all along the river.
And this is what they do. The water comes downstream, and during the drought, it's redirected, deflected into the center of the river. It makes the channel deeper, and it scours out the silt.
But engineering can only do so much. The rest is up to nature. Just how much rain would it take to make the river right?
20 inches.
Right, and that would be at on a regular and recurring basis.
That's not in the forecast. Long-range predictions actually show the river dropping another 2 to 3 feet, which is why Captain Waller and others on the Mississippi fear life could be about to hit bottom.
Well, we just keep going till she quits moving.
Supply there. This is because the low river levels. Maya Rodriguez, who got caught in one of those storms in Belle Chase, joins us now from Belle Chase on the telephone with what the parish is doing to combat the problem. Maya?
Well, hey, Mike, you know that salt water from the Gulf is coming up the river and getting closer to the water intakes here. Now, to make sure the parish has enough drinking water, several things are happening. One thing, Plaquemine Parish says it's talking to Jefferson Parish about accessing water from JP through a 12-inch pipeline that is already in place. Plaquemine Parish is also working now with New Orleans on plans to begin construction on an 8-inch pipeline to New Orleans that would run about 1,000 feet, also to try to bring water in. Now, both of those pipelines could provide water to the Belle Chase area, but for points in the lower end of the parish, a barge will need to be used to transport water to an intake in Port Sulphur and another on the east bank of Plaquemine Parish. Now, the parish has had this saltwater problem in the past, both in 1988 and in 1999. Here's what Plaquemine Parish President Billy Nungesser has to say about the latest situation.
There's no need to panic. We're not going to run out of water. We'll make sure we get this in place before we have to, before the levels get too high. Right now, we're mixing the Port Sulphur water with water we're piping down from Belle Chase to keep those levels low enough to where it's not affecting the public. But at some point, we will ask them to conserve water.
Now, the leading edge of the saltwater right now is approaching Belle Chase. In the meantime, the Army Corps of Engineers says bids are due today to build an underwater sill in the river to try to block the saltwater from coming up. We'll have much more on this story coming up in our later newscast. In Belle Chase, Maya Rodriguez, Channel 4 Eyewitness News. Mike.
A new report and a major alert about the speed of climate change on this planet. Hundreds of scientists from around the globe saying today there is evidence that global warming is accelerating. Sea levels rising, greenhouse gases mounting, glaciers melting. And for the first time, a government-backed report links the recent wild weather to man-made causes. So is this a kind of tipping point? ABC's weather editor Sam Champion begins. By breaking it down for us.
The extreme weather of 2011.
Oh gosh, that is a monster tornado.
The worst drought in a decade. Even the recent headline of the hottest 12 months we've ever lived through. All are a global concern. Areas of the world are getting hotter and drier. Flood zones getting pummeled. Extreme weather becoming the rule, not the exception. And according to many scientists, global warming is a cause.
What we know really well about global warming is that it increases the likelihood of more extreme events.
Today, hundreds of scientists from 48 countries released their annual State of the Climate report, which shows the trend toward a rapidly warming planet has been accelerating. The study examined headlines like rising temperatures both on land and in our oceans, and examined disappearing sea ice. 2011 showed the second smallest area of ice on record. Also noting glaciers around the world continue to shrink. Greenland has one of the largest ice bodies in the world, and pictures now show Greenland's glaciers are melting 30 times faster than they were a decade ago. Over the last century, sea levels have risen about 10 inches. But by 2050, scientists predict the levels will increase another foot. If that holds true, parts of cities like Miami and New Orleans will be underwater.